My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I beg you pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Amen. Well, tonight's talk is the emotions of Jesus, the emotions of Jesus. Last time we talked about Jesus, what are you going to do about it? The tragedy of the human situation, the living in the valley of the shadow of death. What is Jesus doing about it? And during our feedback form last time, we had all these options of topics to cover in the future, and the overwhelming response was, let's talk about the emotions of Jesus. The emotions of Jesus. There's a church in Jerusalem overlooking the Mount of Olives, from the Mount of Olives overlooking the Temple of Jerusalem, where Jesus would have prayed, kind of nearby the Garden of Gethsemane, a little bit further away from there. But it's a unique church. It's a very small church, and it was built in the middle of the 20th century, very classical looking, but it has a very unique roof. The roof is formed in the image of a teardrop upside down, kind of like an upside down drop of water, or a drop of water coming. And the name of the church is unique. It has a Latin name. The name is Dominus Flavit. The Lord wept. The Lord wept. The Church of Dominus Flavit. It's traditionally the spot where Jesus, not long before his crucifixion, would have knelt down and wept over the city of Jerusalem as he longed to bring his presence and his peace. And I thought that's an odd name for a church. The Lord who cries. The Lord who cries. What kind of Lord cries? That's not our image of a Lord, is it? Our image of a Lord is maybe someone who's strong, in control, got it together, doesn't have any problems, is coming to save the day. But this Lord was different. He was the Lord who wept. Wasn't the only time he wept, was it? Wasn't the only time he wept. The scriptures also share how Jesus wept at the death of his friend Lazarus. He goes to meet his friends, Mary and Martha and Lazarus, people who were dear to him. And Lazarus has died. And what does Jesus do? Does he say, it's okay, we'll live another day and enjoy life? Does he say, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die? Does he offer some kind of platitude? No, he merely weeps. He merely weeps. Jesus not only weeps, he also gets angry, doesn't he? He also gets angry. In the Lazarus story, he's also perturbed. He was perturbed at the death of his friend Lazarus as well. We also read in the scriptures how he went to the temple where there was money changers. With a whip and with anger, he drove them out. With anger, he drove them out. Jesus was kind of an emotional guy. He was kind of an emotional guy. We also read in the letter to the Hebrews, like chapter 5, verse 7, it says, when Jesus was in the flesh, he offered prayers and petitions with loud cries and sighs. With loud cries and sighs. Not just cries, but loud cries. Loud cries. Ever hear somebody just wail? Right? Not just shed a tear, but just wail. That was Jesus. That was Jesus. In our world, we often treat emotions as problems, don't we? We often treat emotions as problems, like someone got emotional, so it was like a problem, right? Or a burden, emotions as burdens. Or sometimes it's described as, I broke down, like it was a failure that I got emotional or had an emotion. There's lots of reasons for that. We live in the modern world, which is sort of divorced from traditional morality of virtues and values. So what do we have instead? We have this very sterile talk of duties and behaviors and rights and obligations. What could be more boring than morality as duty and obligation, right? We also live in an age which is very stoic. The Stoics were ancient philosophers, many of them Romans, some of them Roman emperors. Maybe the most famous is Marcus Aurelius, very famous Stoic emperor and author. And the ideal of Stoicism was to face the sufferings of life as someone who's mentally strong by practicing this interior habit of indifference, by almost becoming apathetic. That if you don't care, you won't suffer. And so it's better just to rise above the sufferings of life, says the Stoic. It's better to rise above the sufferings of life by just expecting the worst, becoming indifferent to the ups and downs, and just sort of being on an even keel, because it's too hard to care. It's too hard to care. If you go on audible.com, one of the number one categories of books that people are listening to is books on Stoicism in our own modern age, right? Nothing's new under the sun. It's kind of becoming the new religion of the day. To be stoic, to be tough in the face of suffering and anguish and tragedy, to not let it affect you. Maybe the key phrase for Stoicism in our modern time is to be mentally tough. That's sort of a value of Stoicism. I'm mentally tough if I don't have emotion or if I don't break down. Jesus was not a Stoic, right? He was the opposite of a Stoic. He was full of emotion, anger, sadness, but also joy, right? And many other things. So if Jesus was so emotional, then are emotions good or bad? Are they good or bad? I think our tradition would say that our emotions are pre-moral. They're neither good nor bad. They just are. They just are. But oftentimes we tell ourselves, why am I feeling this way? Why am I angry? I shouldn't be angry. Why am I sad? I shouldn't be sad. We're often shaming ourselves because of our emotions. I shouldn't be feeling this way. When it comes to emotions, there's no should. It's just they are. They are. What we're concerned about in morality is choices, the choices we make. But our emotions are not yet a choice. They're a feeling, a rumbling, a movement. And they often tell us the truth about where we're at in our life. They often tell us the truth about how we're doing. I say this a lot sometimes. How do you make a liar out of someone? You ask them how they're doing, and they'll say, I'm doing fine. When it's really not fine, is it? It's really not fine. I knew a young man who was a seminarian for the CFRs, the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal. It's a religious order of Franciscans in New York City. And they run soup kitchens. And one day he sat down next to a poor man of inner city New York, and he asked him, "How are you doing?" And he was surprised to get a 45-minute answer. I think sometimes we think it's virtuous when we act without emotion, merely from the sheer act of will or dispassionate objectivity. But in the writings of one of our greatest theologians, St. Thomas Aquinas, he says the virtuous person acts in harmony with their emotions, right? They're angry when they should be angry. They're sad when they should be sad. It adds to their virtue when their emotions correspond to the objective reality ahead. Like Jesus. His friend died. So he wept. This is the scandal of the incarnation. In the modern world, sometimes people don't believe that Jesus is God. And I get that struggle sometimes. How can this simple carpenter be divine? But I actually think it's harder to believe that Jesus is human. It's harder to believe that he's fully human. We sometimes treat him as like some kind of Superman who's maybe not really in the flesh. But this is the great beauty of our faith, the great truth of the incarnation, that he's fully God and fully human. That he knows every human emotion, every movement of the heart. He knows every part of it. He's fully human. And we won't become like Christ unless we too become fully human. Unless we too share even our emotions with Jesus. Not hide from them, not shame them, not run from them, not pretend they're not there. Emotions are often an invitation to relationship with others and with Jesus. To share really how we're doing. To not just say, I'm doing fine, especially in prayer. Every year in the Office of Readings, that's the Liturgy of the Hours that a lot of priests and religious pray. Well, we have to pray. But it's the one before morning prayer. There's always readings from the fathers of the church. And in the summertime, St. Ambrose has this beautiful writing about how in the Psalms, if you would pray all the Psalms all the time, there's something for everyone because they express every human emotion. The Psalms express every human emotion. They do. I think maybe that's why Jesus was so emotional. He was a man who Mary would have taught him the Psalms. Right? Mary's heart would have taught him the Psalms. And so what do we do with our own emotion when it comes to our spiritual lives? That's a rich place for our own spirituality. Some of you may have heard of relational prayer. To acknowledge, relate, receive, and respond. It's a classic kind of mode of prayer. To acknowledge what's in our heart, what thoughts, feelings, and desires in our heart, and then just to share them with Jesus. Just to tell him about what it feels like to be sad over a circumstance in our life. What it's like to be angry over something that is wrong in the world. What it's like to be disappointed when something doesn't go our way or somebody lets us down. What it's like for something to be bittersweet, maybe a farewell or new beginnings. Or what it's like just to have the joy of being alive on a sunny day when it's 10 below and there's snow, or maybe when it's 70 and we can put down the windows in the car, or whatever it might be. Whatever swims around in our heart, that can be the stuff of prayer. Just to acknowledge and share our emotions. Not to talk ourselves out of them, but just to feel them and to share them. That's the path to friendship with God sometimes, is just to share. Just to share. Maybe that's what I invite us to do tonight during some of our time of prayer that we have left, is just to acknowledge what's on our hearts. Psalm 139 is great for that. O Lord, you search me and you know me. You know my resting and my rising. You know when I rest and when I lie down. Nothing is hidden from you. That's not God doing surveillance. That's God seeing us and understanding us. Before we can be fully loved by God, I think we have to be fully known and fully seen. And we long for that. We long for someone to see us in our own experience that we carry in our life. And that can be part of our prayer, letting God see us and how we're feeling. Ups and downs, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it might be. Tears, excitement, anger, frustration, whatever. He can take it. One time I read an examination of conscience that said, "Are you angry at God?" And I thought someone should strike that line. That's not a sin, right? Read the Psalms. The psalmist is always angry with God. And that's scripture. Sometimes we're just angry, aren't we? He can take it. He can take it. He's God, right? Sometimes we have this false reverence for God. Like somehow I got to protect God from me, you know? He made us. What's there to protect him from, right? He just wants to hear from us. So let's take some time to pray. We'll just take some time to pray in silence, and we'll wrap up in about 15 minutes with benediction. And maybe just share whatever with Jesus in your own heart. Whatever you're bringing tonight, just to acknowledge and share with him just how you're doing. He's there in the monstrance saying, "How are you? How are you?" Let him know and see what he has to say.